My name is Mark Sheppard. I'm a member of our church's governing board. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reston. Whether you are with us on Zoom or here in the church sanctuary, we are so glad you are with us on this gray and a little dreary but dry morning. No matter how old or how young you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, however you identify, and whomever you love, know that you are welcome here. I have several announcements this morning. First, in response to the leaked Supreme Court document indicating that conservative justices on the court are apparently poised to overturn the landmark case of Roe versus Wade, imperiling that case's right to choose protections, UUCR has scheduled a vigil for reproductive rights in America this coming Wednesday, May 11th at 5 p.m. in the church sanctuary. This vigil will give us a time to join together, to process our fears, and to look ahead together for positive actions to protect and defend reproductive rights for all Americans. All are welcome. Please visit our website calendar at uureston.org/calendar to learn more and to RSVP. Second, we invite all members and friends to a volunteer happy hour hosted by Reverend Scott and the church staff. That'll be on Friday, May 20th, again at 5 p.m. Volunteers and those who may be interested in volunteering for the church are invited to join us for a festive happy hour on the deck. Please RSVP again on the website calendar by May 15th. For the third one, I believe we have some visual accompaniment. Join the music committee and other congregants on Friday, July 15th, yep, there it is, for an evening of opera under the stars at the beautiful Wolf Trap National Park for the performing arts. Described as one of opera's most beloved tragedies, Verdi's masterful opera La Traviata is a love story for the ages. All are invited to join in for this special evening of fun, fellowship, and community. Please RSVP by May 15th so that we can purchase group tickets. Those tickets are $27. Financial assistance is available, and youth who are 17 and under can attend for free. Again, please visit the website calendar or contact our music director, Cynthia Leong, for more information. And then last, but definitely not least from the board's perspective, as we've mentioned previously from up here, the board is in search of a new treasurer. Kathy Deligianis has done yeoman's person's work as treasurer for the last little stretch, but she is stepping down from that position, and we are very much in need of assistance. As I believe was mentioned before, the job has been is quite large, and in recognition of that, we've broken the position up into a treasurer and an assistant treasurer position, and we very much need members of the congregation to step forward to help our church navigate this next little stretch of time. If you have experience in book balancing and all the kinds of things that go into making sure that a body like this can continue to function effectively in the financial sphere, please reach out to anybody on the board, to Holly, to me, to whomever. Our service today is being led by Reverend Scott Alexander. We're joined this morning by Linda Weaver, our Director of Religious Education, Music Director Cynthia Leong, and our accompanist, Dr. Jesse Leong. Steve Ewart is serving as the worship associate. Thank you all for participating in today's worship service. And thanks as always to our rotating production team, consisting of Amelia Turner, Mike Schmidt, David Niemi, and Maggie Mack. Now is the time for those of you in the sanctuary, if you have one of these rectangular little black attention suckers, to please consider turning it off, or at least putting it on silent. Be here now. Let us center ourselves for worship. Please take some deep quieting breaths with me as we enter a time of worship together by listening to Spring Creek by George Winston, as performed by Jesse Leong.
Good morning, all. Glad you're here this morning. This Mother's Day, this day in early May, we set aside each year as a special time to both thank and remember those special women who brought us to life and nurtured us in so many different ways, is more complicated this year than most. It's complicated because, as you all know, this week a document was leaked from the Supreme Court which indicates that at least 5 of the so-called conservative judges intend on voting to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 50-year-old landmark decision that protected every woman's right to reproductive freedom. If this occurs, at least 3 terrible things will happen. Millions of American women residing in about half of these United States, most especially Black, brown, and poor women, will lose access to safe and legal and local abortions and personal control over their own bodies and destinies. A minority, the second thing that will happen is that a minority of some 25 to 30% of the population will have finally succeeded in their long sought after goal of imposing their own theological beliefs on when human person begins on the majority who legitimately feel differently. And 3, our nation will become even more deeply and bitterly divided along yet another terrible cultural fault line that threatens the peace and security of our shared life. For these and other reasons, I know you're all worried about these basic protections, and so I've asked Judy to come forward. She's cared about this issue for many years, to light a candle in defense of everyone's right of reproductive choice and freedom. And now back to Mother's Day. This is a day when we celebrate, honor, and affirm those qualities of good and attentive parenting, the qualities of nurturance, generosity, understanding, gentleness, forbearance, and love. As we each pause this day to reflect on our own mothers and perhaps other special women or men who have wrapped us in the embrace of their care, let us do so with a generosity of spirit, for no parent or guardian is perfect any more than we ourselves are perfect. Let us hold in our hearts all who have complicated or difficult or non-existent relationships with their birth mothers, as well as those many women in our midst who experience the sorrow of infertility that comes with being unable to bear physically children themselves. And on this day, even most importantly, whether we are a mother or a father, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt, or cousin, no matter what our familial roles, may we recommit ourselves, each of us, male and female, to the noble task of providing love and nurturance and care for those around us. May we all work and care for others near and far to make life a good and joyous and safe thing for all this Mother's Day of 2022.
Good morning. Our opening hymn is number 64, "Oh, Give Us Pleasure in the Flowers Today." If you are joining us at home on Zoom, the words will be in your chat box. If you are here in the sanctuary, please rise as you are willing or able and join me in singing. Oh, give us pleasure in the flowers today, and give us not to think so far away, as the uncertain harvest keep us here, all simply in the springing of the year. Oh, give us pleasure in the orchard white, like nothing else by day, like ghosts by night, and make us happy in the happy bees that swarm dilating
I lose my touch as an altar boy, a former altar boy. I light this candle in commemoration of all mothers, living and dead. May their heritage live on. On this Mother's Day, we especially need to remind ourselves of the mother's reproductive rights, which reside in an often forgotten text of the Ninth Amendment of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which holds that the natural and fundamental rights, though not listed in the Constitution, belong to the people, the mothers, and not the government. These rights are inalienable, meaning not transferable or capable of being taken away by the courts. Under the Ninth Amendment, we enjoy the right to privacy, which, though not listed, enumerated in our Constitution, is recognized by the Supreme Court and indeed is protected by our Constitution. And we enjoy our liberty from the Liberty Clause of the 14th Amendment, prohibiting governments from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This is what sustains our freedom from arbitrary and unreasonable restraint upon our people, or from religious absolutes that the so-called soul is imbued in us at conception, which we may or may not choose to freely believe. So with our right of privacy and our liberty, the Constitution need not include the word abortion for reproductive rights to be retained by the people. Moreover, with the rights of privacy and our liberty, we do not need to include any words in the Constitution for as adults who we love, or adults who we wish to marry, or what is our sexual identity. Our Constitution does not hide its love for liberty, for one of its primary goals declares to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Amen. Amen.
In our church, we recommit to each other every Sunday by singing our covenant together. Love is the spirit of this church. We will sing along with our choir virtual video, which features also members of our own congregation. So please rise in body or spirit and sing along.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in these, to seek truth in love, and to help one another in fellowship.
Good morning, now that we have sound. Our story today is from an Indian tale retold by Faye Mogensen, and similar to stories from the Middle East and by Italo Calvini, Hans Christian Andersen and Leo Tolstoy. Once, there was a wealthy woman with a beautiful mansion. She had all of the food and the finest objects that anyone could ever desire. However, like most parents, the only thing she really wanted was for her son to live a happy life. He was almost an adult now, and all he did was complain. The mansion and the food were never quite right. The weather could be sunnier or rainier. It could be warmer or colder. It seems like all of his friends disappointed him, and he was always bored. The mother gave him every computer game he wanted. She took him on trips around the world. She brought in musicians, magicians, and entertainers of every kind. But still, he complained. She called together all of her wisest advisors. She called in doctors and psychiatrists and religious leaders and philosophers. They spoke with her, they talked with her son, and then they went to the mother and said, "Your son isn't sick or depressed, he's just unhappy. What you need to do is find a truly happy person and then give your son that person's shirt. The happiness in the shirt will envelop and nourish him." Well, just like you did, the mother thought that sounded very odd, but she was willing to try anything. So she sent her advisors out to find a truly happy person. One went to a famous and very popular singer who lived in a grand house surrounded with a beautiful family and adoring fans. The advisor asked, "Would you like to have the most popular song in the world?" Oh, his eyes lit up with desire and longing and said, "Oh, that would be marvelous." The advisor then knew this was not the person they were searching for, not a truly happy person. Another advisor went to a passionate and wise religious leader, thinking this is surely the person we're looking for. The advisor asked, "Would you like to have followers around the world?" And the religious leader said, "Oh, I could do so much good. That is exactly what I would desire." The advisor knew this was not the person they were looking for. The advisors looked far and wide, and they couldn't find anyone who was truly happy. They either had too much work or not enough work. They were lonely or had too much company. They were hungry or they ate too much. They were tired or they slept too much. No one was perfectly satisfied. So the advisors came back together near the woman's house and talked with one another. They were about to give up when they heard a merry tune. They followed the music to a field, and there they found a farmer weeding. When the farmer saw them, he stood up and said, "Oh, what a glorious day, isn't it? This is everything I could ever want." The advisors looked at each other, and then they approached the farmer. One said, "Wouldn't you like a larger farm?" "No, that would be too much work," said the farmer. Another advisor said, "Wouldn't life be easier if you were a merchant?" "Oh," the farmer said, "I would miss working the soil and breathing the fresh air." Another advisor said, "But you work so hard. Ah, the farmer said, my wife and children join me, and we enjoy each other's company. Together, the work seems to go so quickly. Finally, an advisor asked, isn't there nothing you wish for? The farmer thought long and hard, and then said, no, nothing. The advisors were astonished, but also delighted. They said, you are exactly the person we are looking for. Our employer sent us out to find a truly happy person and bring the shirt back to her son. Well, the man looked at them, opened his jacket, and said, but I don't own a shirt. Well, the advisors were very surprised, but it was true. They went back to the woman and her son with no shirts. They knew that the young man would have to weave his own shirt of happiness, and they had some ideas of how he might do that. I wonder how you might find happiness. I hope you'll share with each other later today. Now, we'll sing 8th graders and younger to their classes. And you'll see the words for Go With Joy here and on Zoom. Please sing along.
So now is the time in our service when we share our joys and concerns so that no one ever has to hold these things alone. If you are joining us remotely this morning, you may wish to light a real or virtual candle wherever you are to mark what is on your heart this morning. As members of the in-person congregation, come forward to take a stone for each joy or sorrow on their heart and place it in the bowl which holds so much of our love already. And those who are here, if they wish to take a stone from around the bowl to remind themselves during the week what is on their heart, they may do so. Place that at your bedside or your breakfast spot. And if those of you at home would like to write in the chat of your joy or concern, do so, but please realize that this will become public if you share it with all. And then as at home, as you read, please read the other joys and concerns that are written in the chat and reflect on them as Jesse plays our meditation music. Our ritual now begins. Let us be one in spirit and prayer. Spirit of life and love, which so faithfully animates our creation, we are grateful for this community which is with us in both times of joy and sorrow. We hold in our hearts, especially this morning, all who are facing any hardship, obstacle, or difficulty, those who are grieving, facing illness or disability in their own immediate circles. Whether shared here this morning or held silently in our hearts, may our joys be multiplied in community, and may all here find comfort and calm. Amen.
The second Sunday of each month is our dedicated offering to an organization chosen by our Social Justice Social Action Committee. All of today's offering, except for pledge payments, which hopefully are clearly marked as such, will go to Herndon Reston Fish. Fish is a non-sectarian, nonprofit organization providing friendly, instant, sympathetic help, it's Fish, to Herndon and Reston residents in short-term financial crises. Fish works closely with social workers from Fairfax County, local hospitals, and other nonprofit organizations like Cornerstones to serve low-income individuals and families in Herndon and Reston. Every year, Fish helps thousands of predominantly very low-income families and individuals in all demographic categories by providing assistance in paying for rent, utilities, medical expenses, household items, and other short-term emergency needs. If you're at home, you can make your donation at the link in the chat box. You can also mail a check to the church with Fish noted in the memo line. Thank you all for your generous support of Herndon Reston Fish. Let the usher come forward at this time.
Well, that was lovely. Thank you. Better than average. Way better than average. Like Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong and everyone's above average. This morning, on the subject of happiness, I want to share an excerpt from a book, The Paradox of Choice, by psychologist Barry Schwartz. He writes, "Most modern Americans live in a bountiful world. While we don't get to do and to have everything we want, no other people on earth have ever had so much control over their lives, such material abundance, and such freedom of choice as we. But," he goes on, "because of a ubiquitous feature of human psychology, very little in life turns out to be quite as good as we expect it to be. When you make a choice in modern American life about something you want, you always get hit," he says, "with a double whammy: regret about what you didn't choose and disappointment with what you did." This ubiquitous feature, he goes on, of human psychology is a process known as adaptation. Simply put, we get used to things, and then we start taking them for granted. Because of adaptation, enthusiasm about positive experiences does not sustain itself. And what is worse, people generally seem unable to anticipate that this process of adaptation will take place. The waning of pleasure or enjoyment over time always seems to catch us as an unpleasant surprise. And then he goes on, "We could go a long way toward improving the experience of well-being of people in our society if we could find a way to stop this process of adaptation. But adaptation," he points out, "is so fundamental and universal a feature of our response to events in the world, it is so much a hardwired property of our nervous systems that there is very little we can do to mitigate it directly. This means that when we are making decisions," he points out, "we should think about how each of the options will feel not just tomorrow, but months or even years later. Factoring in adaptation may help us to be satisfied with choices that are good enough rather than the best. And this in turn will reduce the time and effort we devote to making these choices." And then Dr. Schwartz gets to his salient point, which I offer for your spiritual consideration this morning. Finally, we can remind ourselves to be grateful for what we have. This may seem trite, the sort of thing one hears from parents or ministers and then ignores. I don't know why he wrote that. But individuals who regularly experience and express gratitude for what they already have, we know are physically healthier, more optimistic about the future, and feel better about their lives than those who do not. And they are more likely, the grateful, to achieve their personal goals. And then he ends, "And unlike adaptation, the experience of gratitude is something we can affect directly. Experiencing and expressing gratitude actually gets easier with practice by causing us to focus on how much better our lives are than what they could have been or were before." And then he ends, "The disappointment that adaptation brings in its wake can be blunted by simple gratitude." Unquote. I want to begin this morning by telling you a personal story about a moment of true happiness, soul-satisfying happiness that I experienced. But first, I need to set the stage. As many of you know, I have a home in Vero Beach, Florida, where up to a few months ago I lived to serve this congregation, but it was my full-time home for more than 11 years while I served the UU congregation there. Vero Beach, for those of you who have not had the pleasure of ever being there, is a relatively small town, 24,000 people, in an absolutely charming, low-density part of Florida. They outlawed high-rise buildings in Vero Beach, so it doesn't look like Miami and Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. And almost every day I'm lucky to be there, I cycle out to the barrier island, which is called Orchid Island, a pristine 30-mile-long barrier island of sand and trees. Sometimes when I bike, The computer tells me I'm 15 feet below sea level. I'm not swimming, but the satellite's a little off. It's just a barrier island. And it is connected to the mainland by this stately, mile-long, gracefully arching span, Barber Bridge. I think I have a picture of that. I ride across that bridge almost every day. It's a beautiful structure. So anyway, several weeks ago when I was back in Vero taking care of some professional appointments and working for you there remotely, I was biking alone first thing in the morning when I arrived at the west side of the bridge, which is the far side there. Still a bit groggy, I will admit, from not having gotten quite enough sleep the night before. And as I began to climb the incline going east, I was somewhat on biker's autopilot, where I didn't fall off, I was just biking on autopilot, when all of a sudden, miraculously, all heaven broke loose. The wondrous, wider world just broke in upon me in a way my heart could not ignore. I looked up and realized that I was in one of the most spectacular sunrises known to humanity. At least it seemed that way. Now, say what you will about the nice sunrises here. Florida has got the Middle Atlantic beat, I'll tell you. It specializes in spectacular sunrises. You're looking toward England, and that amazing morning, the sun was rising hot and vivid out of the ocean, and the billowing pure white clouds that we get in Florida, through which the sun was peeking, were catching all the vivid oranges and reds and purples. The air in my face was warm and friendly. The winds strong and fresh, blowing east. It's an onshore breeze. The aroma of the morning, including the hyacinth, the hibiscus flower, was pure and sweet. And then, as if all this amazing tapestry weren't enough, there, right above me, just a few feet, was a big V of pelicans. You could see their underbelly feathers gracefully riding on the morning breeze right over my head, soaring in synchronized calm. In that moment, it was as if all creation had suddenly been arranged in perfect harmony just for me. Blessedly, I was able to breathe it all in. I slowed down on my bike. I looked at everything I could see. I smelled everything. I let creation kiss me in blessing. And suddenly, despite my grogginess, I was totally, blessedly, unreservedly happy. I was just happy, alive on a bicycle in Florida. Many years ago, Reverend Harry Meserve, a UU minister who had retired to Maine, wrote this: The things that make life worth living are simple things, common things, things we possess just by claiming them, though we can never own them. What are such things? Sunshine baking into one's flesh, the sting of rain on one's face. Try that yesterday. Sharing a leisurely walk with an old friend, feeling the rich glow of health after exertion, making a useful or beautiful object with one's own hands. He was a potter. Receiving a cheery note from a distant friend, finding in a book the perfect expression of a thought for which one has long groped. The list, Meserve went on, is longer. And then he concluded, life offers the simpleton, more than she or he could ever fully appreciate or use. And then he ended, what enriches life most are the unsophisticated pleasures, the simple joys which can neither be bought or sold, but can always be had for the asking or sharing. Now, I don't like to think of myself as a simpleton, but he's right. To the simpleton go great joys. It's the simpleton who has the wisdom to find right where we live, in the simple, ordinary, unexpected moments of awareness and pleasure, everything that is being prepared for you. And it turns out that leading scientists from Harvard University, no less, and other distinguished universities around the world confirm that it is not just little old me who thinks this about happiness. The simple, genuine, heart-lifting, soul-satisfying happiness I experienced on that bridge this morning it turns out, has been recently explained by leading academics who try to study happiness. It turns out that a spate of recent studies about what makes for human happiness have determined that lasting, soul-enriching happiness, the kind that quietly turns our lives into works of satisfaction, is found not in some ecstatic peak experience like getting the new $100,000 car in the driveway, or landing a big promotion at work, or falling head over heels in love with the person you've always wanted, or winning the lottery even, but rather happiness lies in what one researcher calls the routine of small delights. You have to look in the routines of small delights. Dr. Daniel Gilbert's wonderful book, Stumbling on Happiness, from which I stole the title this morning, he reports on what Harvard University's long studies of the nature and dynamics of human happiness reveals. In a nutshell, what Dr. Gilbert, who, by the way, is known around Harvard as Professor Happiness, he and his team have discovered in their research, psychological research and analysis, that human beings like us are lousy we at predicting the future, most particularly how we will feel about our lives when either good or bad things happen to us. He picks up on many of the same things that Barry Schwartz was observing in this morning's reading. I now quote Dr. Gilbert at some length. What I've been seeing in my lab over and over again is that people have an inability to predict what will make them happy or unhappy. Few of us, he writes, can accurately gauge how we will feel tomorrow or the next week. He says people routinely overestimate how future successes or failures will affect their happiness for better or for worse. The truth is, he goes on, that bad things do not affect us as profoundly as we expect them to, and this is true of good things too. In other words, the good isn't as good and the bad isn't as bad, neither of them, as we think they're going to be. And then he goes on, our research simply says that whether it's some pleasant event or a difficult one that occurs in our lives, both will matter less than you think in terms of your sorrow or your happiness. So the good news, he writes, is that going blind, for example, is not going to make you as unhappy as you think it will. And the bad news is that winning the lottery will not make you as happy as you expect. As a species, he goes on, we tend to be moderately happy with whatever we get in life. If you take a scale from 0 to 100, people generally report their happiness at about, where? 75%. In this grumpy culture, can you imagine that? Most people are 75% happy. And then he says, we try to get to 100. Sometimes we get there, but we don't stay there long. And conversely, he writes, we certainly feel that things that would get us down to 20% happiness or 10%, things like the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, a serious challenge to our health. But when these things do happen, most of us return to our emotional baseline of about 75% more quickly than we think. And then he arrives at his main point, which I offer for your spiritual consideration today. He says, human beings are wildly resilient. A corollary finding is that a simple big payoff in life, a fat raise, a fabulous Hermes bag, a hot cha-cha date, affect people's essential happiness much less than, quote, the routine of small delights. And then he ends with a sentence about where we human beings will find happiness that I just love. There is much to be said for staying right where we are in life in our happy little ruts. Happy little ruts. Dr. Gilbert, there he is. And then he gives a simple example from his own life. When he reports, what's the best thing about teaching at Harvard, he writes, not the prestige and the big salary. It's walking to work, to and from work every day from his cozy little house along the Charles River in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, as someone who loves biking and getting from place to place, I can appreciate this source of happiness. The thing that makes Professor Happiness the happiest is walking to and from work. Anybody recognize Cambridge, Massachusetts? Let me, if I can, graphically represent what all this means in terms by a simple chart that I have very cleverly created for your benefit this morning. And that'll be on the screen. I lost a piece of tape here. I did not go to graphic design school. I did this in the office one day when I was all alone. What Dr. Gilbert is suggesting is that the emotional peaks and valleys of our lives, the ecstasy and the agony that we all experience, while dramatic and intense, and they certainly get our emotional attentions when we become ill, when somebody in our family does something really stupid, when we lose a job, have little to say, these ups and downs, of our long-term and sustained happiness or sorrow. Let's begin with the positive side of the equation. While buying a new Lexus, or witnessing the birth of a new granddaughter, or getting a big promotion, or winning the lottery, do provide immediate and noteworthy spikes in excitement and pleasure, as the psychologists have told us, these feelings of happiness are not sustainable. Your new Lexus will not make you happy in 6 weeks. Because of the universal psychological phenomenon of adaptation, our moods return back down to that in the middle section there, which Gilbert points out, and that's lucky for us, the middle is about 75%. And the same is true for these valleys in our lives. While losing a job or experiencing the death of a loved one or a relationship or having your eyesight deteriorate or having your legs not work like you want to or being diagnosed with cancer, well, these are great shocks to our emotional equilibrium. They generally are not sustained, the sadness, as we fear they might be when we think about them in advance. For just with the really good stuff in life, the really bad stuff in life, we adapt. We bounce back into that middle range of adaptability and happiness. Again, Dr. Gilbert says that this is in large part due to the fact that when bad things happen to us, we rationalize and reframe reality. You know, when a spouse leaves us, well, he was never the right person for me. Or, well, it's a good thing I didn't get the big promotion because I need more free time with my family. We rationalize when bad things happen. And people, Gilbert observes, have a remarkable talent for finding ways to soften the negative impacts. They thus mistakenly expect such blows to be much more devastating than they turn out to be. And so, sustainable happiness, the kind that can make a genuine positive difference in our lives over the long run, turns out to be something we best experience in that middle-ish domain of routine life. Routine life. The everyday habitat of ordinary relationships and routine experiences where we don't have a car accident and don't lose a job and don't get to witness the birth of a new grandchild. It's easy to take these things for granted. I've asked Jesse now to take just a minute or two and play the piano in a gentle, rhythmic way that musically represents this holy ground of the routine, this holy ground of the drab middle that we often take for granted. Just listen to this music and then we'll go on. It's almost too good to be true, isn't it? The true happiness is found in the little ruts of the life you already have, the little habitual ruts. It's okay to want the new Lexus, but you got to realize that you're going to be more happy driving your noisy kids to a soccer game in that old beat-up minivan of yours. It's okay to dream of a 9-day luxury vacation in Tahiti, but you can do just as well in a West Virginia state park in a crowded cabin with all those noisy and sometimes complicated relatives of yours. It's okay to dream about moving to a fancy house in the best Northern Virginia neighborhood, as long as you realize that your modest little townhouse here in Reston is really all you ever need for happiness. It's okay to want bigger and more and better and fancier. Human beings always dream of such. It may be disappointing news to some of you who are always hooking your emotional star to what's next and what's bigger and what's better, but the emotional and spiritual truth is that the only way to stumble on happiness is already where you are in your little routine ruts of human being. Next graphic. Life-saving happiness is found in the routine of small delights that already lies about you and within you. So on this still dreary spring morning, Mother's Day, when we have the opportunity to express our appreciation for motherhood, dream of a more spectacular personal future if you must, but the truth is you don't need any more than you already have to discover all the life-sustaining happiness for which you were, I believe, created out of the primordial soup. All the stuff the gods would take to make heaven are already at your disposal. So today, you can enjoy a lazy lunch with a few good old friends. You can get out and walk or get on a bike. You can hike along the Potomac River at Great Falls and exercise your body till it feels good. Or you can read a good book, or waste several hours watching sports on television, or play with your grandkids in the den, or volunteer down at the soup kitchen, or prepare your favorite meal for that old crusty spouse of yours, or share a good laugh with a good friend over the phone. The crusty old spouse, that wasn't written here. I just came up with that. I don't know where it came from. It just popped out of my consciousness. And tonight you can tuck your kids or grandkids into bed with their favorite blanket, and you can snuggle with your spouse or a pet or just an Afghan and a favorite magazine as you once again drop off into the holy embrace of sleep. The sky is the limit, dear friends. Right here in this familiar old, slightly worn house of a life, this slightly worn old house of a life you already have. I can offer you nothing more saving and sweet than this truth today. In this place, right here, right now, you can stumble on your happiness by simply tripping over what you already are. That's all I've got for you this morning. Amen.
Our closing hymn is number 398, To See the World. Jesse will play it once through for us. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing.
send you on your way this week with these words of poet Nano Sakaki, written in the tradition, ancient Japanese tradition of haiku. Soil for legs, axe for hand, flower for eyes, birds for ears, mushroom for nose, smile for mouth, songs for lungs, sweat for skin, wind for mind. Ah, just enough. And our postlude is a wonderful song written by my friend Clark Gessner, son of a Unitarian Universalist minister. Happiness is. Happiness is finding a pencil,
pizza with sausage,
Telling the time.
happiness is learning to whistle,
tying your shoes,
For the very first time. Happiness is playing the drum in your own school band.
and happiness is walking hand in hand. Happiness is two kinds of ice cream,
knowing a secret,
Climbing a tree.
happiness is 5 different crayons,
catching a firefly,
Setting him free. Happiness is being alone every now and then.
and happiness is coming home again. Happiness is morning and evening, daytime and nighttime too.
for happiness is anyone
And anything at all
That's loved by you. Happiness is having a sister,
sharing a sandwich,
getting along. Happiness is singing together when day is through. And happiness is those who sing with you.
happiness is those who sing with you.
Happiness is morning and evening, daytime and nighttime too.
For happiness is anyone
and anything at all
That's loved by you.
Happiness is listening to that song. And at a Unitarian church, happiness is coffee. And greeting your neighbors. That's right. That's right. We invite our congregants attending worship on Zoom to join us for our virtual greet, your neighbor coffee hour today, to discuss the service theme, which, in case you missed it, was happiness. Yes. Excellent. Well done. Yes. Happiness, and enjoy fellowship with other congregants. The link is in the chat box and will be on a forthcoming slide. Those here in person are invited to join us outside on the deck for coffee or tea. Yes, for tea or tea. And to socialize and discuss the service theme. Just a reminder for everyone that we leave the chairs unstacked now. And we hope those of you who are joining us will use the chat box as a virtual receiving line to leave a message about your appreciation for the worship service. Happy remainder of your Mother's Day. And those of you who are here, please join us outside. Thank you all.